you're recognized.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing, and Ranking Member Capito. The 30 by 30 initiative by the Biden administration aims to preserve 30% of the land and waters in the United States by the year 2030. This is far from a new or novel overreach. Since the Wilderness Act of 1968, Congress has passed 120 new laws, resulting in the creation of 803 wilderness areas, totaling approximately 117 million acres. During the Obama and Biden administration, a precedent was set for the misuse of the national monument designations. The Antiquities Act was employed to unilaterally designate or expand 34 national monuments covering an extensive 553,550,000 acres of land and water. Building on this legacy, the Biden administration has continued this effort. They've issued 5 new monument designations, and they've effectively locked up nearly 2 million acres of land. Ms. Williams, the last time you were in front of this committee, you were unable to specify the congressional act that authorizes the 30 by 30's egregious land grab. And that's because there is no congressional authority. There is still no clear definition of conservation. It's led to uncertainty and instability for private landowners. The administration has consistently neglected to specify whether working lands, conservation, multiple use, and active management will be considered as part of the conservation criteria for 30 by 30. Numerous congressional oversight inquiries have gone unanswered. It's contributed to a state of confusion and uncertainty regarding the 30 by 30 initiative. True conservation is sustaining land for working land purposes. It is my belief that private landowners are the best stewards of our lands. Nebraskans are a prime example of this. Nebraskans have demonstrated that landowners can effectively balance the productive use of their land with conservation efforts. Nebraska is a national leader for acres utilizing no-till practices on farms. Our agricultural producers are voluntarily making decisions. They don't need the federal government coming in and telling them how to do their business. These stakeholders and communities should instead be utilized for their knowledge. Studies have shown that critical habitat designations can reduce land values by up to 30%. Landowners are then left with no compensation. Rural communities that rely on land values for property taxes, and these funds then support education, infrastructure, and other essential services. But when you reduce that, obviously that reduces the local community's ability to be able to provide those services. A prime example of this is what's happened to communities following the listing of the northern spotted owl as an endangered species by Fish and Wildlife Service. The critical habitat designation was followed by declining timber sales. Because of federal bureaucrats' unilateral action, rural counties saw their tax base was limited by the growing amount of federal land. As a result, Congress had to pass the Secure Rural Schools program. A portion of the Forest Service funds generated through grazing, timber production, and other special use permits are distributed to eligible counties. These communities now rely on these funds to maintain local roads and schools, all because federal bureaucrats actioned to cut their tax base. While programs like Secure Rural Schools provide important support for rural communities, the fact remains that this was a solution that had to be created because of a government-fabricated problem. Inflation has hit rural communities harder than others. The federal government butting out and allowing them to responsibly manage their land and natural resources will allow communities to be more resilient in depressed economic times. These stakeholders and communities should be utilized for their knowledge and passion for the land, not held to the fire by federal oversight. So, Ms. Williams, how does the service collaborate with private landowners to incorporate their perspectives and local knowledge into conservation strategies rather than imposing top-down measures?
Thank you, Senator Ricketts, for that question. And this is work that I have long been engaged in well before this position. The Fish and Wildlife Service, I can give an example with the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program, where we work with ranchers and partners to hear what they want in their location, and then provide technical expertise to apply for grants that would work for them. There's an example of how we work with private landowners in your state of Nebraska, where through the bipartisan infrastructure law with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, we worked with the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission using $4 million in the bipartisan infrastructure law grant funding to implement just what you have asked, voluntary incentive-based program to promote vibrant grasslands with ranching communities. So I would answer that we have long understood that the best conservation is that is locally led, where we learn from the community, and when we're working with private landowners, absolutely voluntary and incentive-based.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Williams.